Hey, McNutt here. If you haven't seen Edge of Tomorrow, it's hands down one of the best sci-fi movies ever made. One concept that immediately stands out is summed up by a great Bill Paxton line as he prepares his troops for battle against alien invaders. There can be no courage without fear. It's a profound concept. You must be experiencing fear in order to show courage. Courage isn't being fearless. Courage is being terrified and doing the thing anyway. The Tom Cruise character learns to apply this only after many spectacular failures, most of which end in his own death. But there's a job to be done. Tommy C learns and advances in impressive fashion. Now, in real life, this courage to fear experience is not reserved for wartime exploits. This happens to normal, everyday people everywhere in countless situations. Vladimir Horowitz was one of the greatest pianists of the 20th century. He exemplified this kind of courage throughout his career, often experiencing failure, but finding a way to face his fears again and again. Born in Russia in 1903, Horowitz was a prodigy, shaped by a demanding father who tolerated nothing short of perfection. This early pressure planted seeds of lifelong perfectionism and a crippling fear of failure. Real quick, if you enjoy this kind of content and true stories of inspiring people, I would greatly appreciate it if you would consider subscribing to help the channel grow. Your clicks, likes, comments, and subscription tells YouTube that this little channel is out there trying to survive. Thanks. Horowitz rose to fame in the 1920s and 1930s, captivating audiences with his astonishing technique and emotionally intense performances that made him one of the most sought-after pianists of his time. He left the Soviet Union in 1928, lived in Berlin briefly before making his home in the United States, becoming a naturalized citizen in 1944, at a time when his rare talent was admired across the entire planet. Yet, behind the public success and the worldwide appreciation was a man who was being truly tortured by extreme, debilitating anxiety. The man was battling monsters in his mind, and he feared he couldn't keep them at bay. As you likely know, one of the greatest fears we humans agree upon is the fear of performing in public. We take for granted when certain people have a skill set, passion, or career of being in the public eye because they do it so often. We assume they've already conquered their fear of failure, but not so, especially for those who carry the burden of perfection. It's easy for us, the viewer, the critic, to say, "Oh, he missed a shot. He screwed up. She choked. She lost focus." We forget, if we ever really knew, the sacrifice, the pain, the agonizing commitment just to earn the right to be on that stage. The expectation of perfection with the world watching is a burden that demands everything a soul can offer. Horowitz's anxiety was due to, ironically, the immense pressure to live up to his very own reputation. Think about that. He was haunted by the fear of not being able to be what he had already proven himself to be. There are no shot blockers or hard-hitting linebackers to worry about in the arena of musical performance, although that is a sport I would absolutely watch. The fearsome adversary is the green-eyed monster of self-doubt. Even as critics and audiences praised him, Horowitz felt that his performances were never good enough. He always found something to loathe, to regret. This fear of perfection led to intense, real physical symptoms before performances. Stomach pains, trembling, and overwhelming dread. His anxiety was not just a fleeting case of stage fright, it significantly impacted his career and life. In 1936, during a performance at Carnegie Hall, Horowitz experienced a memory lapse and abruptly left the stage in a state of distress. Although he eventually returned to complete the program, the incident was a public embarrassment and marked one of the early signs of how deeply his anxiety could affect him. In 1951, scheduled to perform in Milan, Italy, Horowitz canceled the concert at the last minute, unable to face the prospect of performing. This last-second cancellation was a significant disappointment for his fans and added to his reputation as an unpredictable performer. Similarly, in 1972, in Hamburg, Germany, he arrived at the venue only to decide at the last moment that he couldn't go on with the performance. The audience, already seated and waiting, was informed that the concert would not take place. Yet, despite these cancellations, Horowitz's brilliance when he did perform overshadowed these moments of retreat. Horowitz's anxiety was closely tied to his struggles with depression. Throughout his life, he experienced mood swings and deep sadness, often coinciding with periods of withdrawal from public life. This wasn't simply Horowitz being a diva. He was truly suffering and didn't want to live his life this way. In the 1950s, he sought psychiatric treatment, including electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT, which was a common but controversial treatment for severe depression at the time. These treatments, along with the limited understanding of mental health during that era, meant that this maestro, this musical god, wanted help but couldn't get it. In interviews, Horowitz spoke openly about the toll that performing took on him. He once said, "The concert is a battle. You fight, you win, or you lose." This reflects the intense internal struggle he experienced every time he stepped onto the stage. He also remarked, "I am a neurotic, and I live in my music. It makes life bearable for me." These statements underscore just how deeply juxtaposed his identity as a musician was with his mental and emotional state. One of the most significant periods of withdrawal came in 1953, when Horowitz took a 12-year hiatus from public performances. During this time, he focused on recording, as the controlled environment of the studio allowed him to manage his anxiety better than the unpredictability of live performances. This hiatus, however, did not mark the end of his in-person career. The public's desire for his talent and his captivating live performances never waned. But after more than a decade away from audiences and expectations, could he really summon the courage to battle those old familiar demons again? May 9th, 1965, Carnegie Hall in New York City. Yes, the same place he walked off the stage in humiliation in 1936. Horowitz accepted an invitation to play again after 12 years of being away from the stage. The stakes were incredibly high, and the anticipation for his return was immense. In the weeks leading up to the concert, Horowitz's anxiety was so severe that he considered canceling multiple times. Even on the day of the performance, there were fears that he might not be able to go through with it. Yet, despite his terror and mental anguish, Horowitz did take the stage. The performance that followed was nothing short of legendary, technically brilliant and emotionally charged. It confirmed his status as one of the greatest pianists in history. The recording of this concert became one of the best-selling classical albums of all time and is often cited as a high point in his career. The success of this performance highlighted not just Horowitz's incredible talent, but also the immense courage it took for him to overcome his fears and deliver such a powerful performance. That victory over self-doubt opened the door to possibly the greatest challenge he would ever face, with stakes higher than most performers will ever remotely come close to experiencing. 1986, now beginning his 9th decade on the planet, Horowitz returned to the Soviet Union.
His visa granted him permission to be gone for 6 months. He was gone for 61 years. This morning, in one of the most eagerly anticipated musical events of this century, Vladimir Horowitz will play again in the country of his birth. In just a few minutes from now, at the age of 81, the last of the dazzling, romantic virtuosos of the piano will step onto the stage of the Great Hall of the Moscow Conservatory.
You might think that performing in front of Soviet officials and family members he hadn't seen in many decades would be remarkably stressful. Yes, he did acknowledge that. But the Moscow event was far more than a piano concert. It was part of a larger diplomatic effort to ease the tensions between the two superpowers of the United States and the Soviet Union. It was seen as a cultural bridge between East and West, as the Cold War was hopefully coming to an end. So, no pressure. Soviet media actually did little to celebrate or even acknowledge the return, but word got out. He was mobbed by adoring fans who were clearly moved at his return.
From my childhood, it was my dream to hear Horowitz, and now my dream will come true.
This moment had a deeper meaning to the people who felt enormous pride in their countrymen. Despite being well into his 80s, Horowitz delivered a performance for the ages. The concert, broadcast worldwide, was met with rapturous applause from the Moscow audience and became an iconic moment in classical music history. Think about this. To him, at least, every performance was judged against perfection. In the technically complicated Rachmaninoff Sonata No. 2, keys are pressed over 20,000 times, 600 to 1,200 times per minute. I honestly don't think I could accurately hit the same key 20,000 times in a row without accidentally trespassing on a neighboring key. Fun fact, Horowitz had a close personal and professional relationship with composer Sergei Rachmaninoff.
He was a wonderful pianist and a nice friend. He was my best friend.
The two pianists admired each other greatly, and Horowitz's interpretation of Rachmaninoff's works, especially the Piano Concerto No. 3, are legendary. Rachmaninoff once said that after hearing Horowitz play, he felt as if he had written the piece for him. Rachmaninoff even stated that he never knew the possibilities of the piano until he heard Horowitz play. Horowitz's story is not just about a pianist who played with extraordinary skill. It's about a man who, despite being terrified, continued to do the thing anyway. In doing so, he left an indelible mark on the world of classical music and a legacy of courage that continues to inspire. Thank you so much for watching. McNutt out.
All these people